In the last video, you got your code pushed up to GitHub. In this video, you're going to get your code pushed up to Heroku. That's going to allow us to actually deploy our Node.js applications to production. By the end of the video, you're going to have a real URL, and anyone with an internet connection will be able to visit that URL to view and use your weather application. Now, like we did with GitHub, we're going to go ahead and set up a new remote, and we're going to use that push command to push our code up to this new remote. But there's also a couple of other changes we're going to need to make along the way to our application code to allow it to work with Heroku. Now, one great thing about Heroku is that we can manage our applications from the terminal. So with GitHub, we had to use their website to do a lot of things. With Heroku, we actually don't need to touch the web application at all. We installed the Heroku command line tools earlier in the section, and we can use those to create our applications, to manage them, and to push new versions of our applications up to the production environment. Let's go ahead and kick things off by heading over to Visual Studio Code and running a couple of commands from the terminal. The first thing we want to do is set up our SSH public key file with Heroku. You'll remember in the last video, we copied the contents of that file to the clipboard, and we brought it over to github.com. Now with Heroku, we don't have to use that. There's a single command we can run to get that done. It is Heroku space keys : add. When we run this, it's going to look through our SSH directory and ask us which keys we want to upload. Here it found the only public key we have, id_rsa.pub. It's asking us if we do want to upload this to our Heroku account. In this case, we do, so I'll type Y and I'll hit enter. Now our SSH key is associated with our Heroku account, and we're going to be able to securely send code back and forth. With this in place, let's go ahead and start the process of creating our application. You can create your Heroku application by using Heroku create. Now, this is something we want to run from the root of our project. So we want to run this command from the web server folder. And after create, we can also specify a name for the project. If we don't specify one, Heroku is going to randomly generate one for us. And that can be confusing because it's not going to say something like weather app, so we won't really know what the Heroku app is for. It's best to give our applications a name. Now, these names need to be unique, not just across your own account, but across all Heroku applications. So I typically start them off with my last name. Something like mead-weather-application would get the job done. I'm going to go ahead and run this command, and it's going to do a couple of very important things. First up, it's actually going to create a new application on the Heroku servers, and second up, it's spitting out two URLs. The first is a location where we can view our application. This is the live URL for the app, and the second is the URL for the Git repository, where we should be pushing the code we want to deploy. Let's take a quick moment to crack open this first URL in the browser. From the Visual Studio Code terminal, I could copy and paste it, or I could Alt-click it to open it up in the browser, and when I open it, I get the following screen. It's saying, welcome to your new application, and it's not showing our app because we haven't deployed it yet. So this is the welcome screen we're going to see by default. This will go away once we actually get our application deployed. So at this point, we have executed Heroku create, and we're ready to start the process of getting our code up on the Heroku servers. Now, before we do that, we have to make a couple of very important changes so Heroku can actually know how to run our application. We have to provide it with some basic instructions of what to do when it gets our code. One of the most important things we need to change has to do with what's inside of package.json. So in order for Heroku to start up our application, we have to tell it which file to run. Now, from the terminal locally, we've been using Node to run app.js in the source directory, and that's exactly what we want Heroku to do as well. We tell Heroku we want it to do that by specifying it in a script. So we have this script object in package.json. This allows us to set up scripts. These are key value pairs. The key is a name for the script, and the value is what to run from the terminal. Now, by default, your package.json file has a test script which just prints a message to the terminal saying that no test cases have been specified. That's okay for now. We're actually going to explore testing a bit later in the class, and we'll set up a real test script. For now, we can remove that line completely, emptying the script's object. All we're going to do is set up a single property on this object. We have our key value pair. The key needs to be start. So we're specifying the start script, telling Heroku how to start up our app, and the value is the command to run. Right here, that's going to be node space source/app.js. If Heroku runs that command, it's going to start the application up correctly. Now, these scripts aren't limited to Heroku. We can actually use the start script locally in our project to start up the application for ourselves. From the terminal, we can get that done using npm run. npm run accepts the name of the script you want to run, and right here we can use the start script. So this is a command we can run to start up our application locally. This is the exact command that Heroku is going to run to start up our application on their servers. So making this change is very important. Right here, if I do run this locally, we can see that it's starting up the application, and we get server is up on port 3000 printing. Now I can go over to my localhost 3000 tab like I had before. I can refresh things and the app is still working as expected. So that is the first change we need to make. We needed to tell Heroku what to do to start up the application. The next change we need to make lives inside of app.js in the source directory, and it has to do with one of the last things we do in this file. Way down at the bottom, we call app.listen, and we listen on port 3000. We have to change that. We can still use port 3000 when we're running the app locally on our machine, but Heroku is going to provide us with a port value that we have to use when our app is running on Heroku. Now, this isn't a static value we can hard code in the project. This is a value that changes over time, and it's provided to our application via an environment variable. An environment variable is just a key value pair set at the OS level. In this case, Heroku sets 1 for the port, where the value is the port number to use. So all we need to do to actually support this is to change the two references right here and add one new line. The new line is going to live up top, right below where we define app. Right here, let's go ahead and create a new constant, and we're going to call this new constant port. So what value do we want to use for port? Well, to start, let's go ahead and extract the value that Heroku provides. That is available at process.env. env is an object, and it's where we can access environment variables. Now, this is exactly what Heroku sets, and we'll learn how to set our own a bit later in the class. For now, we need to access uppercase P-O-R-T, uppercase port. So this is going to set port equal to the environment variable value. Now, this is only going to be set on Heroku, which means that when we run the app locally, things are going to fail. We can fix that by using the logical OR operator in JavaScript, and right here, providing a default fallback like 3000. So here, port is equal to this value if it exists, or this one if this value doesn't exist. So on Heroku, this will exist and it'll be used. Locally, this won't exist and this will be used, meaning our application will still work just fine locally. Now, all we need to do is actually use this port variable down below. I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the file and we're going to swap it out. Right here, instead of passing 3000 into app.listen, I'm going to pass in the value stored in port, and the same thing is true with the string. Instead of statically typing out 3000, I'll concatenate on whatever value is stored in port. Now that we have this in place, the port issue is fixed, and we can move on to one final thing we're going to need to address before we're ready to push our code up. This lives inside of the public directory in our client-side JavaScript. So right here, we have our JS folder, and we have app.js. The line in question is this line. For me, that's line 14. This is where we call fetch, and this is where we provide the URL we want to fetch. Now the problem is that when this code runs on Heroku, it's still going to try to access localhost, which is not going to exist. That's going to prevent us from ever being able to correctly fetch the weather. To address this, we want to remove the domain completely. If we're on localhost, we want to make the request to localhost. If we're on our special Heroku app URL, we want to make the request to that URL. This is going to be similar to what we did over inside of templates, partials, header.hbs. In here, we set up all of our navigation links, and I didn't list out the entire domain. I just used / followed by the specific thing I wanted to visit. We can do the exact same thing here inside of our fetch call. So what I'm going to do is remove everything from the H in HTTP all the way up to the end of the port. We're going to leave just / weather, then we'll set up the address query string. That's going to make sure to use localhost if we're running on localhost, or to use the Heroku app URL if we're running on Heroku. Now those are the 3 changes we need to make. The first told Heroku how to start up the application. The second made sure that our application listened on the port Heroku was expecting, allowing it to actually serve things up. And the third made sure that we made the weather request to the correct location. Now that we have all of these in place, we have to make a commit and push our code up to Heroku. So from the terminal, I'm going to use clear to clear the terminal output, and I'm going to run git status to start the process of creating that commit. Right here, what do I have? I have 3 modified files, the 3 files that we just changed. I want to commit all 3. So I'll use git add dot to add all of those to the staging area, followed by git commit with the M flag to provide my message right here. Set up app for Heroku. Perfect. Now I can hit enter to actually create that commit, and we can go ahead and start by pushing those changes up to GitHub. So right here, git push. When we do this, it's going to push our code up to the origin remote. And right here, we can see that things have been updated correctly. If we head over to the GitHub repository, you should be able to refresh the page and see those changes showing up. Here I can see the public and source folder changed 23 seconds ago, while many of the other folders changed over a day ago when I filmed the last video, and package.json also got changed recently. That's a good thing. From here, we can now push up to the Heroku remote. Now, when we ran that Heroku create command, it actually spit out the remote URL that we had to push to. Not only did it show it to us, it also set up the remote for us. Right here, if we use clear, we can use git remote to view all of the remotes that are configured. We have 2 showing up. The first is origin, which we configured, and the second is Heroku, which was configured for us. Now to deploy, all we have to do is use git push Heroku master. This is going to push our latest commits up to the Heroku git remote. When Heroku sees that new commits have been pushed, it's going to deploy our application again. So right here, when we run this, it is indeed going to start with output we saw when we pushed up to GitHub, but now it's moving on to something else entirely. It's installing our dependencies for our application, then it's getting the process kicked off, and that's going to allow us to view our server when we refresh things in the browser. Now, the entire deployment process only took, maybe 15 seconds? And right here, we have the URL where our application can be viewed. Now, we already have that URL open in a browser tab. This is where we had the welcome screen earlier in the class. Let's go ahead and just refresh this page. Right here, what do we get? We have our weather application showing up. I can navigate between the pages on my weather app, and I can also search for the weather for a given location. I'll go ahead and search for Boston. I'll hit the search button. Right here, I get my location, and I get the forecast showing up, which is fantastic. We now have our weather application deployed to a production environment. This URL is not something we're able to visit because it's running on our machine or we're logged in. This is a public URL that anyone in the world with an internet connection would be able to visit to view our app. Now, the URL we're seeing here is just our application name as the subdomain at herokuapp.com. This is the default URL, but if you go out and purchase your own domain, you can configure your DNS records to work with your Heroku application, and you can have a completely custom URL up above. There are great documentation articles in the Heroku Dev Center that can walk you through that process. Right now, though, we have our application deployed to production. Everything is working really, really well. We have our code backed up to GitHub, where we could collaborate with others and track issues in our application, and we have our code pushed up to Heroku, where it can deploy our application. Now, we had to make a few changes to get that done, but it was only maybe 5 or 6 lines of code to get our application working on Heroku's infrastructure. That's where we're going to stop for this video. There are still a couple of videos left for this section. In the next one, we're going to walk through the new feature workflow, making sure you're comfortable adding new features to the application and getting those pushed up to GitHub and deployed to Heroku. I'm excited to get to that, so let's go ahead and jump right in to the next one.